mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sisters and brothers, friends for life. We won't live in the past. We're making it last.
It's time for another conversation. Welcome to Make It Last podcast, where it's all about helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, with other people. I'm Noreen Daly, and this time around, I have Tony Esteves. I'm going to make sure I pronounce that correctly. He's an author, he's a facilitator, and he's a speaker. And he's deeply passionate about human connection. And the topic we're going to be unpacking is the joy of talking to strangers. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, it might be obvious to a lot of people, but let's just have a working definition of joy. How would you then define the word joy?
I would define joy as, in my case, a physical sensation of happiness. So when I experience joy, I, of course, can't help but feel a smile come across my face. And yeah, I feel joy deeply in my body, mainly in my chest, I would say. That's how I know I'm experiencing joy.
Okay, that warm, fuzzy feeling, so to speak.
Right.
All right. So, with that, tell us because there are a lot of people who they fear meeting people, they just dread that. They prefer sometimes to be introduced to new people. So how then can one get joy from talking to strangers?
Well, although I do think it's possible for everybody to get joy from talking to strangers, I don't think that everybody truly wants to experience that. For the people you just outlined, for example, who would much prefer to have an introduction or maybe don't actually really even enjoy talking to people they don't know, it might be very difficult to try to sell them the idea that it could be joyful for them. For people who are open to this possibility, people who are curious, I'd say can absolutely learn how to become how to experience meeting strangers as a joyful experience. And I'd say the very beginning step to that would be to start with the smallest first step.
And that is?
Well, it depends on where the person is on their connection journey. Typically for people who are introverted, as I used to be, it might start with just kind of a mindfulness piece, right? Just being more present when you're out in public. So that means keeping the phone tucked away and looking up and noticing what's going on around you and doing that without even trying to talk to people yet. But doing that, you start to notice people, you start to notice things and conversations about stuff that you're maybe interested in that you could potentially, when you're ready, join. So I'd say just paying more attention, being present would be the very first step for many people.
Okay. This is not something that is just a quote unquote concept for you because you've actually done this. So tell me a little bit about how, because you said you were introverted. So how did you just make that shift? So now being so open and actually find pleasure in doing this.
It happened for me many years ago, in fact. So I was completely introverted, very shy, insecure, bullied teenage boy until my sort of late teenage years, when inspired by my older sisters, I decided to run for student council, which was a really weird choice for me because I was so shy, but I saw them having fun with it, so I thought I'd try. And I just awkwardly put myself out there. Like I would give out flyers to people, kind of expecting them to maybe yell at me, be like, hey, here's a flyer, I'm doing this thing. And I got some positive feedback from some of the people who I would encounter, like by huge surprise. And it would slowly build a little bit of self-confidence in me, these little moments of micro bravery, as I call them. And eventually I learned that skill of how to meet people through doing these small steps and gaining my self-confidence over time. But for me, yeah, it happened in my teenage years.
Okay. What then are the other steps? Because you said that's the one, initial step. But what then are some of those other steps to then find that joy of talking to strangers? What are some of the other steps?
Well, the joy, thankfully, can come
Mm-hmm.
quite quickly. So once you get to a place where you feel like you could start to listen to that voice, that curiosity that most of us have about, hey,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on over there? What are those two people talking about, or what are they looking at over there? And you allow that curiosity to get out of your brain and then come out of your mouth as words, like a question, uh, because you've learned from a book like mine or someone else's that proves that when we approach strangers, research proves
Mm-hmm.
that about 9 times out of 10, we will not get rejected as long as we're doing so respectfully. But most of us think like 9 times out of 10, we will get rejected, but we just got it wrong. So lots of research proves that you're going to be fine. You're going to not get criticized or put down. So once someone gets comfortable enough to allow their curiosity to say something
Mm-hmm.
impulsively, that
Mm-hmm.
moment of joy can come very quickly because almost always people will greet you with a smile or a thank you or invite you into the conversation. And if this is new for you, that can give you these butterflies, this physiological sensation of that I experience as joy. So it can happen very quickly.
Mm-hmm. The thought of just literally putting yourself out there, for somebody who is not quite there yet, what would you say to them to just help to nudge them on that journey, though?
Great question. Uh, yeah, I would encourage them again to start with that mindfulness piece, right? So the
Okay.
first thing is we're not even going out in public to try to talk to anybody. That's down the road. What we're doing for starter is to try and become more present. Because part of the reason we're dealing with a loneliness epidemic right now is all of these devices that are very beautifully
Mm-hmm.
designed to be highly addictive. And many people just don't know that they have a choice to not always leave the house with the phone. And people don't know necessarily that it would be very good for them and for their nervous system to take a break from the phone, even if it's just a half an hour a day. But and so if
Mm-hmm.
if people can dare to practice this mindfulness piece, it's a behavioral change thing, right? You start to notice things that you would never notice before. Most importantly, people. And eventually you do start to see opportunities. What happens with most of the people I work with is they start to see opportunities where they could say something like, oh, I wanted to talk to that person about their cool scarf in the elevator, but I froze up. And I'll say, hey, that's a really good observation. So we start by just observing these moments when we could speak up, and eventually in time, with some support, usually they'll get the courage to actually say something, and then it begins.
So it's interesting you should just make reference to devices and especially the phones. Don't you think it's quite ironic that for a device that is supposed to keep us connected, more than anything else, it actually disconnects us? Because more often than not, even in closed spaces, even like in an elevator, a lot of times people have their heads down. They're on their phones rather than, as you said, just reaching out. And how can we change that though in a world that is so, you know, focused on this?
Well, you can be a little bit daring. So I have experimented. So I've intentionally met more than 3,500 strangers outside of my work, and I've documented many of these instances. Ironically, on social media channels like YouTube, Instagram, right? But
Mm-hmm.
as with the wish of educating people that basically you're probably never going to get rejected, and really great things can happen. And yeah, it is ironic that these devices are designed to connect us, but so they've wonderfully disconnected us. I use that
Mm-hmm.
term in jest. But my observation and my experience has been that even on a train full of people, I've done this in London, England, I've done this in Canada, I've done this in the United States, most recently in New York City, actually, just 3 months ago. You see people with earbuds in and they're reading or they're doing something. Once again, we assume they don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
bothered. But if you
Mm-hmm.
have a reason to speak to someone, like, for example, to compliment them on a really cool bag or something that sparks your curiosity, more than 9 times out of 10, they will be happy to unplug and communicate with you because humans need human connection. And
Yeah.
actually, people who are hiding in their devices secretly or knowingly would rather talk to the human than be doing the work they're doing, or or just in solitude. And I
Mm.
acknowledge that sometimes, of course, we want our own space. Sometimes we don't want to be bothered by people. That's absolutely true. It's true for me too, sometimes. But my experience of actually being out there on the streets doing it has proven that I never get rejected when I interject with someone, even when they're on the phone or with earbuds in. We just think we'll get rejected, but it's really, really rare.
What's the number you said that you've intentionally spoken to? How many?
I've intentionally met over 3,500 strangers outside of my work
Oh, and this is over what time period?
over the last 15 years. Hi there, I'm Tony. I'm Tony Esteves of TalkToMorePeople.com, and I'm having the honor of doing a TEDx presentation on how you can change your life by meeting people very, very soon. But first, we're going to take a little break to hear from our partners.
You can't live your best life without a healthy immune system. Boost your immune system the delicious way with Zappy's organic juices and punches. Made from local produce with zero added sugar, our juices cleanse and revitalize your body as they boost your natural immunity. Try our delicious flavors: Beat It, Berry Bomb, Get Fresh, Ton Up, and Island Splash. Find us on Instagram at Zappy's Organics, or call or send a WhatsApp message at 1-876-779-8910 to order today. That's 1-876-779-8910. Zappy's Organic Juices and Punches. Live your best life today.
I was the person who the teacher would always call on to read aloud in class, and that traveled with me until whenever. But if you took away the paper, if you took away the book, I would freeze. I would die right on the spot. Let me introduce you to my 17, say 18-year-old self. Good with content if I'm to read. However, if I was to ever express my thoughts without writing them on paper, it was no good. Noreen was the one who recognized my flaw, but she didn't leave it there. She led me along the journey of developing my communication skills. She allowed me to know how to critically think on the spot, but not only that, how to arrange my thoughts logically so that I can come across as persuasive in my argument.
Langdo Language Institute was created to meet your language and communication needs. All of our packages were created just for you. We are passionate about language and dedicated to your success. We offer the CSEC English program, the Study Body program, the Get Ahead with English program, and the Business Communication program. Contact us at 767-285-0938 or email us at landolanguage@gmail.com, because the real question is, how can we help you?
Welcome back. Here we will continue.
Okay. I know it's gonna be a bit much, so take your time. If you had to think of your top 3 encounters, what would those top 3 encounters be, and where did those happen?
Well, two of them come to mind very quickly. I'll have to
Okay.
check the database for the third.
Okay.
So one of the reasons I believe I have the authority to teach people how to meet people and how to
Mm-hmm.
build their self-confidence is, while I was navigating depression almost 10 years ago, I did a little social experiment where I intentionally met one new stranger every day for a whole year. And this profoundly changed my life. Okay, it got me out of depression, it got me off antidepressants, and it introduced me to communities in Calgary, Alberta, where I was living at the time, that I never knew existed. It introduced me to all kinds of new friends.
Mm-hmm.
And on the 305th consecutive day, so 10 months into this project, I sat next to a young woman at a
Mm-hmm.
mindfulness event. So there was like a house concert, and I felt like a thumping sensation in my chest, this attraction. And I was instantly nervous, like teenage boy nervous, sweating, and what do I say? Even though I'm the talk to more people guy, I was all
Mm-hmm.
nervous. And anyways, I spoke with this young woman during the dinner break. Like there was a potluck and everyone was sharing food. And I think I asked her something along the lines of, "Yeah, how are you liking the food?" And she said, "Oh, it's good." And then my anxiety came down and we got to chat a bit. And by the end of the night, I was able to get her phone number. And we spent the next 8 years in romantic partnership together. Okay, so I got to meet a really, really important partner because of my journey of intentionally meeting strangers. So that was a young woman named Renee. We're no longer connected in such a way, but we are still very important people in each other's lives. And I'm deeply,
Great.
deeply grateful for that a really nourishing, amazing relationship because of talking to strangers.
Mm. That was one. You have two more.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So that's one. And the other ones will be a little
Mm-hmm.
bit more succinct. But another one was actually through an introduction from a friend of mine in Toronto who runs a men's group that I had attended back when I lived in Toronto. And he said, "Tony, there's this really cool guy who's coming through Calgary. You should meet up with him." And so this man and I were introduced by email. We
Okay.
met up for a dinner, and he's about 20 years senior to me. So now he's actually in his 70s, and he and I just hit it off instantly. And he's
Mm.
a very talented musician. His name is True. I met him on day 142 of my Talk to More People project. And since meeting that man, who, by the way, now, 9 years later, I'm going to have coffee with right after this interview, right? He's become one of my closest friends and mentors in the world. So, a deeply spiritual man. He's a traveling musician, extremely knowledgeable in just in many, many ways
Mm-hmm.
that I'm not. So, I've learned so much from this
From
man,
him.
and we co-hosted a music festival together. I've been able to introduce him to people in my community, and he ended up staying and living in Calgary, which was not his plan. He's now been living in Calgary for 9 years. I know at least a little part because of all the people he met, because of having met me, you know. So that's another huge ripple effect of meeting a
Mm.
stranger, and I'm deeply grateful to have that person in my life to this day. And I suppose the third one I will share, actually, it did come to
Mm.
me, is on day 228 of the Talk to More People project. I was at a facilitators meetup where other people who facilitate learning experiences would meet up. At the time, I was still drinking alcohol, so we
Mm-hmm.
have beers, and it's just kind of networking, but kind of social. And I met this lovely couple, and we got talking about improv. And
Okay.
I'm an improviser. I've actually also performed in a professional circus for the last 10 years. So I'm an entertainer as well, right? Um, and I mentioned to them, hey, I'm thinking about starting an improv group. Would you folks like to come? And they said yes. And I got to teach them improv and also play with them over several weeks. We met for a while, once a week in my apartment, then, once or twice a month.
Mm-hmm.
For years, we brought together many people to do improv, and they were strangers who I met. And one of them, Tracy, she's actually a mindfulness expert. And as I've mentioned earlier in our conversation, there's a real important mindfulness part to meeting new
Mm-hmm.
people. There's an entire mindfulness section in the Talk to More People book that this woman wrote. She kindly contributed to my book. And on June 1st, I'm moving into their apartment in Canmore, Alberta, in the mountains. And they're still very, very close friends of mine. So those are three examples of important people who came into my life
Mm.
during that year-long project of meeting strangers.
As we're wrapping up, you did it for an extended break. Was there any point where you said, why am I doing this?
Yes.
Or is it that something just kept you motivated to just, and if so, what was that one thing that kept you motivated to continue this project?
So there is there is one day that I speak openly about in the Talk to More People book when I couldn't leave the house, right? I had come off antidepressants, but I was
Okay.
still dealing dealing with my depression. I was still in therapy. And on on day 79 of the project,
Mm-hmm.
I actually did not meet a stranger. And I could have taken that in two directions. I could have said, well, I failed my big challenge. I quit. But what I decided to do was to redo day 79. So the next day, I knew I could get myself out of the house. I did. I met a stranger, and the project continued
Okay.
because I'd already done so much work.
Okay.
I didn't want to just give up because it wasn't perfect. I'm a big believer in done is better than perfect. And so I did, and it turned out to be a phenomenal life experience, this whole project. So I think the thing that kept me going was those joyful moments. Like, just there's so many incredible moments of surprise waiting for us just beyond our comfort zone if we take the time to learn the skills of how to actually do that. And so I think that the joy is what kept me going. And these are three examples of many that I have of how meeting strangers changed my life. And yeah, so joy was a big one to keep me going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if for you that joy is just basically connecting with people, yes?
Yeah, for me it is. I mean, it's now proven that having healthy social relationships, like having healthy social relationships towards midlife is the number one factor to predict how long you will live, according to the Harvard study of adult development, which is an 85-year-long study that is still ongoing right now with thousands of people. So it's a bigger factor than whether or not you smoke 15 cigarettes a day, right? It's incredibly important to have and maintain good social health. Just this month, the World Health Organization um, has announced that they're acknowledging that it's as important as nutrition and exercise, right? So they've passed a resolution to address the epidemic of loneliness in the world today, which is like humongous news in the human connection space that it's getting
Yeah.
acknowledged on, a global scale. So more and more people are becoming aware that connecting with people is important, and in particular, connecting with people face to face. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
here to cheer them along and give them some tools to make it easier and maybe even make it more fun.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's an excellent note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing, Tony.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. If anyone's interested in checking out my stuff, head over to talktomorepeople.com.
Thank you. Thank you. This was Making It Last podcast, where it's all about helping us to have better relationships, not just with ourselves, but with other people. I'm Noreen Daly. Until next time.
Mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, sisters and brothers.